Nathan Graves arrived in Black Hollow just before the fog rolled in. It was a small town, isolated, nestled at the edge of a vast, eerie swamp. He parked his car on the outskirts, got out and lit a cigarette. He took a long drag and surveyed the town with a skeptical eye. The air was heavy with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. A shiver ran down Nathan's spine, but he dismissed it as the chill of the approaching evening. He had come to Black Hollow to investigate the stories of mysterious disappearances. He didn't believe them, of course. People always loved a good ghost story. He walked towards the town, his footsteps echoing on the empty street. The fog was already starting to creep in, tendrils of white snaking between the buildings. It moved with an unnatural speed, he thought, too fast for a normal fog. As he entered the town square, a figure emerged from the mist. An old woman, her face etched with worry. She looked at him with suspicion in her eyes.
"You shouldn't be here," she rasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Not once the fog starts."
Mary Holt sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea. Her eyes, however, were fixed on the fog that was slowly enveloping their little town. It was a familiar sight, yet no less terrifying. She had seen what the fog could do. She had been just a girl when her brother Andrew disappeared. One minute he was there playing in the garden as the fog rolled in. The next he was gone, vanished without a trace. Their parents had searched for days, but the fog had swallowed him whole. Now, years later, Mary still felt a chill run down her spine every time the fog descended. She could almost hear her brother's laughter on the wind. A whisper in the mist, a constant reminder of the town's terrible secret. The fog, she knew, was more than just weather. It was alive. It held the memories of the town, the whispers of the lost souls it had claimed. And it was hungry for more. The townsfolk whispered about a curse, a malevolent entity that resided within the swamp. They said it was the reason for the disappearances, the reason for the town's perpetual fear. Nathan, however, scoffed at such superstitions. There had to be a logical explanation. He spent his days interviewing the locals, trying to piece together the truth behind the legend. He visited the library, poring over old newspapers and town records. But the more he learned, the more the fog seemed to seep into his own mind, clouding his thoughts with doubt. He met Mary Holt during one of his investigations. Her grief was palpable, a heavy weight that hung in the air between them.
She told him about her brother, about the fog, about the whispers she heard on the wind.
He tried to reassure her, to offer a rational explanation. But even as he spoke, a part of him wondered if he was only trying to convince himself. As the days turned into nights, and the fog continued its relentless advance, Nathan found himself questioning everything he had ever believed. Was there more to the legend of Black Hollow than he had initially thought? Was the fog truly something to be feared? Andrew Holt remembered the day he disappeared. He had been playing in the garden, chasing butterflies as the fog rolled in. He remembered the feeling of the cold mist against his skin, the way it seemed to wrap around him like a shroud, and then everything went white. He had been lost in the fog for what felt like eternity. Time had no meaning in this ethereal realm. He wandered through the mist, calling out for his mother, for his sister, but only silence answered him. He was not alone, however. He could hear them, the whispers, faint voices carried on the wind. They spoke of sorrow, of loss, of an unending despair. They were the voices of those the fog had claimed, trapped forever within its embrace.
At first he had been terrified, but slowly, as time blurred into an indistinct haze, he began to accept his fate. He was one with the fog now, a whisper in the mist, lost but not forgotten.
Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Nathan ventured into the swamps surrounding Black Hollow. The locals warned him against it. They said the fog was strongest there, that it was where the entity resided. But he was determined to uncover the truth. He could feel the fog's presence growing stronger with each step he took deeper into the swamp. It clung to him now, a cold, damp embrace. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the only sounds were the rustling of unseen creatures and the whispering of the wind through the trees. He stumbled upon a clearing, his heart pounding in his chest. In the center stood an ancient oak, its gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, and there, carved into the trunk of the tree, was a symbol, a spiral, twisting in on itself like the fog that now surrounded him. He recognized the symbol from his research. It was the same symbol that had appeared in the town records, in the old newspaper clippings, in Mary Holt's tearful description of her brother's disappearance. It was the mark of the fog. He started hearing the whispers more frequently now, whispers that seemed to slither from the fog itself.
Nathan.
They whispered his name, whispered of his deepest fears, whispered of the futility of his investigation.
You can't escape.
He tried to ignore them, tried to rationalize them as tricks of his sleep-deprived mind. But the line between reality and delusion was blurring. The fog was seeping into his sanity, twisting his thoughts, driving him towards the brink. One night he woke from a nightmare to the sound of his own name being whispered.
Nathan.
He sat up in bed, his heart racing, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The room was dark, the only light coming from the moon that shone through the window. And there, framed in the moonlight, was the fog. It pressed against the glass, tendrils of white reaching out, beckoning him. He stumbled out of bed and towards the window. He could have sworn he saw a face in the fog, a young boy's face. Andrew Holt? Was it real, or just another cruel trick of his imagination? The fog consumed him entirely. It filled his lungs, his mind, his very being. He was lost in a swirling vortex of white, the whispers now a cacophony in his ears.
Nathan.
He saw faces in the mist, heard voices calling his name, felt the touch of unseen hands on his skin. He was no longer sure what was real and what was a figment of his fractured mind. He wandered through the fog-choked streets of Black Hollow, a gaunt, wild-eyed figure muttering to himself, his laughter echoing through the empty streets.
Join us.
The townsfolk watched him from behind shuttered windows, their faces pale with a mixture of pity and fear. They had seen this before. They knew the fog's power, knew that it would not relinquish its hold easily. He stumbled towards the swamp, drawn by an unseen force. He could feel the entity's presence now, stronger than ever before. It was calling him, luring him to his doom.
Come to us.
Elias Mercer watched from his porch as Nathan Graves disappeared into the swamp. He had seen it all before. The arrival of the stranger, the initial skepticism, the growing paranoia, the inevitable descent into madness. It was a cycle as old as the town itself.
I've seen it all before. The fog claims another.
Elias had lived in Black Hollow his entire life. He had seen the fog claim countless souls, friends, neighbors, even family. He had learned to accept it, to coexist with the entity that haunted their town.
The fog is a part of Black Hollow just as much as the houses, the streets, the people.
He knew that the fog was a part of Black Hollow, just as much as the houses, the streets, the people. It was a force of nature, powerful and unforgiving, and like all forces of nature, it had to be respected. He sighed and turned away from the window, the screams of the lost echoing in his ears. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid warming his throat.
Another soul claimed by the fog, another victim in an endless cycle.
The fog retreated from Black Hollow as quickly as it had arrived. The sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow on the town, but the peace was deceptive. The entity was still out there, lurking in the swamp, waiting for its next victim. In the distance, a car approached. A young couple, their faces bright with anticipation, eager to explore the quaint little town they had heard so much about.
Poor souls, they have no idea what's waiting for them.
Elias Mercer watched them from his porch, a sad smile playing on his lips. He knew their fate. He knew that the cycle would continue. The fog would claim them, as it had claimed so many before them. Their screams would join the chorus of lost voices, their whispers carried on the wind, a chilling reminder of the town's tragic secret.
Black Hollow, A place where the fog whispers secrets and claims souls.
Black Hollow would remain shrouded in mystery. A place where the fog whispered secrets and claimed souls. A place where the line between reality and nightmare blurred. A place where the living envied the dead.